Well, hello, and thanks for checking out the RFP. Each month, we talk to a rock star, and I'm your host, Vahid Farzana, founder and CEO of Freestyle Creative. Joining me today is Kelly Gann, Freestyle's president.
Thanks, Vahid. I'm Kelly Gann, president at Freestyle, and many of you may or may not know this, but Freestyle actually got its start as a film production company, and so this is a very special month for us with deadCenter on the horizon. It's coming up on June 11th, and so when we had the opportunity to interview today's guest, we jumped at the chance. We have a very special deadCenter Film Festival segment for this month. We'll be interviewing Lance McDaniel, the Executive Director of deadCenter, and then we'll interview two filmmakers to watch with feature films that are in the festival this year. And so joining us today is Lance McDaniel, the Executive Director of deadCenter Film Festival and an Emmy-nominated filmmaker who has worked on over 21 feature films, including the Oscar winner Million Dollar Baby. Lance, thank you so much for coming on the RFP today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And as you know, I have kind of been around since you all launched Freestyle Creative, and you all have been such an important part of our festival and have really helped, I believe, helped filmmakers realize the business side of filmmaking and that marketing your film can be as important as making your film. And I think that you all really, before you guys did that professionally, the only one who was really kind of thinking like that was Kyle Roberts. And now all of us are thinking about, okay, once I make the movie, what's going to happen? And I think that was a step that was missing that you all really helped provide for our industry.
Well, thank you. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, the years have gone by really fast. It's been really enjoyable. Well, the question that everyone's dying to find out is, during this quarantine, what show have you been binge watching?
So that is a great question, and I have been binge watching, like most people. There's a lot of them, but so the 2 seasons of Big Little Lies was something that I had completely missed just because of work and everything else. So that was the first thing that I dove into and just loved it. And the acting is amazing. And I thought season 2 was even far superior to the first one. So it was really fun. It's not a fun topic, but it's fun to watch great actors doing very dramatic roles. And then Tiger King, I love. McMillions, for me, was one of the most spectacular because, deadCenter gets a lot of great documentaries. And so to see something like McMillions, which you're like, I don't care about that. And then it totally blows you away and it's fascinating. So I really loved that. And I think my next up is I'm going to binge watch Ozark as soon as deadCenter's over.
Just finished that. It was amazing. Season 3 was incredible.
Oh, yeah. And all my friends in New York are watching it, but I'm like, I can't dive in right now because deadCenter is only 3 weeks away. So right now I'm going and trying to watch every single movie that's playing deadCenter because I'm no longer a judge. We got too big. Years ago, I used to watch every movie that applied, but now that there's 1,600 of them, I can't. And so basically we have a whole group of judges that pick everything. And then once it's picked, I get to watch it to help promote it for the festival. So it's been exciting to see all these fun movies that we're playing. I watched one about Billie Holiday that is going to blow your socks off. It's just absolutely fabulous. And I can't believe there hasn't been a more definitive documentary about her yet. But yeah, so it's been fun. So I've been catching up on movies. I've already seen all the Oklahoma ones because I watched those first. And then now I go through and watch everything else that's getting in. And we're going to have a fun festival. It's exciting.
Wow,
you're
that sounds
excited.
really cool.
I'm curious to hear, some of the films that you're excited to see. But before we jump into all things deadCenter, I want to go back and start at the beginning. And so many people may not know this about you, but you got your start in advertising in Oklahoma.
Yes.
And then you worked as a consultant for major brands, including Levi's, Starbucks, Virgin Airlines, and you worked in some major cities around the world, including San Francisco, New York, London. Tell us about that and how you got your start.
Well, thank you. So I went to school in California. I went to Stanford, and when I graduated, I came back home for a year, and I worked at Ackerman McQueen, and I worked for a woman named Lael Erickson, and I know that you all know Lael. But she is still probably one of the most important people that I've ever worked with because I learned so much about what it means to be dedicated to a job, even when it's not fun and when it gets challenging. Because, we were on 18-hour-a-day shoots, and she's like, if you want to be in film or advertising, these are the hours. This is how it works, and you can either like it or you can go work at a bank. But the hours aren't changing. So you can either jump on board or not. And she was able to find beauty in places. We were doing the tourism campaign. So we would drive around all over Oklahoma and she'd stop and be like, yep, this is the one. And when you look at those Ackerman commercials for tourism, and they still use a lot of the same footage, all the time-lapse footage that you see on a commercial, I helped with, and that was in 93, so that's how expensive time-lapse photography is. But it was all done on film. But so working with someone like Lael, who was super dedicated to her career, but also had an amazing eye and could find the beauty, whether you're doing a commercial for Homeland or whether you're doing a commercial for Fred Jones, Ford, or whatever it was, she was able to find the beauty. And it was such a great thing to take with me as I got into commercial film, and went into the film industry, because I had been trained by someone who had such an eagle eye for finding beautiful images. She's like, we have 30 seconds to communicate in a commercial, so every image has to matter and every image has to tell that story. And what a luxury to learn that as a 22-year-old, so that, when I went on to make movies and stuff, I still have in the back of my mind, no, even this picking up a cup of coffee, there is a way to make that help tell the story if you film it correctly. So I feel like advertising was the perfect launch pad for me. And then when I went to San Francisco, I worked for Conan Belding, and we did Taco Bell, and then I did Clorox and Levi's. And I got to working on websites, and that's where I decided to get out of traditional advertising and get into internet consulting. And so we built the first website for Harley Davidson and McDonald's and Levi's, and the Starbucks one was probably the biggest project I ever worked on, and it was massive. But yeah, that tiny little local business. But it was amazing. So like when we were, kind of my favorite story about Starbucks is we're building websites, and you have a team of about 7 core people, from the engineer to the information architect. And they had a rule that any consultant had to go through their entire barista training in order to work on their projects. And it seemed like a total boondoggle. So we get flown up to Seattle and spend 3 days learning how to make coffee and all this stuff. But it was amazing how you never stopped thinking about that when you were working on their project. And so while it seemed like a little bit of a waste, by the end of the 1.5-year project, you're like, that may have been the best 3 days we spent, because we got a deep dive into their business. And so, when I think of you all and all the great work you're doing for different clients, I realized how lucky I was to have mentors and people, and to work with companies like Starbucks. It's like, no, we're taking over the world for a reason. We are doing it right. We're going to be in every single person's mind as to, Boyd, I'm kind of tired, maybe I'll run by a Starbucks, So it was interesting to get to work with brilliant marketers like that. And because the internet was so young, we really had access to the CEOs and to the CFOs of these major companies when we were building their websites. And that was a lot of fun.
So you talked about finding beauty for some of these brands, and then I bet that segued well into, I guess, your film background. So tell us, how did you transition from the internet consultant side and then pivot and go down the film path?
Well, that's a great question. I think I just got tired of being successful and making money. Looking back, that's the only thing I can think of that would have led me to leave advertising and consulting for a film career. But no, I was living over in London, and I was head of creative for Scient, a consulting company, and it was just a super fun job. But I'm like, this isn't what I was meant to do. And I had been a film major in college, and so I decided I'm going to change careers and go into film. And so I ended up moving back, but I told my boss that, and I have benefited from a ton of great bosses. And Bill LaRoe was this guy's name, and he was like, Lance, I get it. If you're making a life change, though, you don't have to make it immediately. And if you'll stay for another year, I can get you transferred to New York. I can get you another job. He's like, but if you quit, then you're just moving home from London yourself, And so I ended up taking a year longer to transition, but it was such great advice. And I think that I have really benefited from a lot of bosses that really cared about me, not only as a worker, but also as a person. He's like, hey, I get it. You want to do something different, but there's an easier way to do that. And I can help you with that if you give me a year. And so it was just, so I'm very grateful for Bill LaRoe and Lael and all the great bosses I've had. So I moved to New York, went to a film program at NYU, they had a continuing education program, to see if I really wanted to do it. Went to Alaska on kind of a soul searching mission and decided I was going to change my life. And I interviewed with Gray Fredrickson, moved to LA, and started working on movies. And so that was in 2005, I believe, or 2005. So it's been 15 years that I've been working in movies. And I've worked on 21 feature films. After working on $1 Million Baby in Los Angeles, which obviously was fabulous, and Clint Eastwood was great and everyone was great, I got asked to move back to Oklahoma with Gray, and I hadn't been home in 18 years, and I visited but not lived there, and so I was like, yeah, I actually would love to do that. It's been so long, I haven't been with my family, and so that decision to move home to Oklahoma was without question the best decision I've ever made in my life. And I certainly, like, going to Stanford was a good one, moving to London was good, but no decision has really impacted my life as positively as moving home to Oklahoma. And a lot of that is because my family is great, but a lot of that, and I get along with them super well, we hang out all the time. But a lot of it is that we live in an environment of yes. And all three of us, and Kelly and Vahid, I know you know this, that Oklahoma is a place that if you have a good idea, you can get people to support you and people will work to help you succeed. And I think that we're lucky that we came about at a time, and your company started about around the same time that I was doing movies, is that Oklahoma had gone through some hard times and had gotten to a place where, hey, we need young people living here. We need creative people here. We need young businesses here. And so I have found my entire 15 years in Oklahoma to be wonderful, because it's just gotten better and better every year, more inclusive, more diverse, more positive. And so so moving here has been the best decision ever. And I'm lucky that I went into film, because that's really what facilitated my move home.
What do you think has contributed to some of that renaissance that you talked about here in Oklahoma City? What's made that shift?
Certainly maps. I'm the world's biggest fan of maps. And I think that when Norick and them lost the bid, when Oklahoma City lost the bid while Mayor Norick was there for the United Airlines hub, that really got people in Oklahoma thinking, we can't just resist the future. We have to embrace diversity. We have to embrace, including people from out of town and all of that. And so I think all three of us and our companies are the benefit of the fact that 20, 30 years ago, people make some hard decisions, voters agreed to pass self-taxing through the MAPS program. And so I think for me, MAPS is probably the biggest single thing. But I also think it is a generation of people ahead of us. And Vahid, I absolutely am amazed by your father and your uncle. And so people and that's true. People like your father and your uncle who came from a different background that's not traditionally Oklahoma, and put up with a lot of grief, and then became the most successful people in their business in the state. And they didn't leave. They didn't become bitter about it. What they did is they started changing the complexion of the state by donating to universities so there could be a better understanding about diverse cultures and people from different regions. And so right. I think that, and I think my parents are the same way. So the fact is,
absolutely,
people that are 60 to 80 right now really get a ton of credit for how awesome Oklahoma City is for all of us who are 30s, 40s, and 50s, because they were really going against the grain, making decisions that had the benefit of us, years on down the line. So I think that both the people that came before us that were willing to put in the hard work, to face adversity, and also to believe that Oklahoma is awesome. Oklahoma is awesome, and it needs to be more awesome for more different types of people. And because of that, now it is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Oklahoma is fantastic. I mean, you and we've actually worked on a few films together. And
exactly.
Yeah, and I had a question. I want to see, what is your favorite film that you produced or directed, and why?
That's a great question. All of them are pretty great, So I've directed 4 features and I think now 4 shorts. I would say probably the most fun film for me ever was Crazy Enough. And partly because it was the biggest film I ever did. And so Sean Lish and Dave Green and I spent 3 years raising money. And then we hired an all Oklahoma crew and an all Oklahoma cast, except for, a couple people. And to me, that was the biggest project I've worked on. It took, it was a 4-year process to get it completed. And I'm really happy with how it turned out. And so that was awesome, because it was kind of all of our first time trying to step into the big league, and it got released overseas, and it went to the theater or two. And so for me, that was probably the most rewarding. And then as far as shorts go, Swirl, which you worked on, is probably my favorite short. And the reason for that, and you all know this more than anybody, but you start off with a strategic plan, you move into, the creative design, you do that, and every campaign, every film, everything turns out almost exactly like you think it was going to, right?
But not quite, right?
Never exactly that. It's never like, well, we didn't get Heather Locklear, so now it's, Jenny McCarthy. And so, not to date myself, but with Swirl, what I imagined and wrote down and met and talked with Hichop Hughes to choreograph it is exactly what it looks like on screen. And so that is so rare that it is fun for me to watch that, because every one of those locations are some place that I walk by on my daily walks. Since I have a little 5-mile loop, and every one of those were on that loop. And I thought someday I'm going to make a movie in that little cove and this little tree and this little thing. And so that was probably, it was fun to be able to do something so contained that it could turn out like you wanted it to, because usually every feature you're like, okay, well, we lost that location, we lost that person, it's just constant compromise until whatever movie you end up with. And so, so both of those.
From your time in advertising and marketing, what were some of those important tenets of marketing and promotion that you carried over into marketing your films?
I think anyone who runs a business or owns a business has to think about marketing. And I think, with big corporations and stuff, you're like, marketing's costing us too much and all this. But if you're a one-person business, you have to get people excited about what your business is, and that is marketing. And so, and if you want people to buy it, they have to know about it, and they have to know where to get it and all that stuff. And so I feel like the basics of marketing, who is your audience? Who are you trying to reach? How are you going to reach them? All those things that you're thinking about are really, again, kind of like I referenced earlier, that's what you all have brought to the Oklahoma film industry is, hey, even from the very beginning, I remember when you all were sitting with Shifter, and Shifter is one of my favorite movies that's going to play deadCenter this year because I just love them. But they had their first kickoff in your office, and I remember those discussions, and it was, we're targeting these people, here's how we're going to get them. And so I just feel like the same thing that you all bring to your clients and to the filmmakers you partner with are the skills that I learned working for Foot Kona Belding and Ackerman McQueen. And what is really great about working for profit is you're analyzing every single detail to figure out how to get one more dollar out of that campaign. And I think with the nonprofit, they're like, oh, well, we tried hard. We sent out a letter campaign. Obviously that's not true. But I think that there's something about the aggressive nature of for-profit advertising and business that really hammers home that, no, we're going to optimize every single thing with this commercial, with this letter campaign, with this, with this billboard. And so I think working in marketing was the reason I was very successful at deadCenter, because deadCenter was already an amazing product. What we needed to do was figure out a way to market it so it wasn't so fringe, and so our growth over the last 10 years has been from about 10,000 to about 35,000 people. And that growth has happened because we were constantly working, and Alex, who's going to be running it after June, is a champ at this too. How do we get new people? Is it through films? Is it through educational programming? And so for us, we don't have marketing dollars. So if we want to reach a new audience, then let's set up a class related to kids learning a skill. And then all of a sudden we get those new, so for me, Kelly, I think all those working on Clorox Beach probably is the most specifically marketing thing, because the product's the exact same as the generic brand, and yet they make $1.80 more per buck, per bleach because of the logo. And so I think just looking at that kind of research that they do really helped me, not only with my films. I actually think I was much better at marketing deadCenter than I ever was at my own films. And I think it's because it's hard to talk about yourself. Mm-hmm. It is very hard to talk about yourself in a way that doesn't feel gross to you. And after you've spent a year and a half making this movie, then you're like, oh, now I have to explain why I made it and be nice every time. And so I do think, I think I need to get better at marketing my own movies, and they'd be more successful. But I think all those skills really came into play when I was at deadCenter.
Any advice for those who are trying to get over, I guess, the shame of, self-promotion and just going for it and promoting yourself and your film?
I think you can't. Yes. And if you don't believe in you, why would you expect someone else to? And if you're not willing to do the hard work of selling it to raise that money, then you're not going to get that money. And a lot of people are like, once I raised money for Crazy Enough and we got a kind of a star, everyone in town was like, oh, will you help me raise money? I'm like, sure. Call 250 people, meet with all 250 of them, and 12 will say yes. Like that. That's my secret, is I spent 3 years talking to every person I knew, and finally 12 of them said okay. And so, and I think people think there's a secret weapon, and it's funny when those guys did Rudderless, and William H. Macy, remember Casey and Jeff, and they're super guys, but I was so jealous. I'm like, oh, they got a famous person and everything's so easy. And then I interviewed them, and they're like, we knocked every door for 3 years. We went to LA, we met with every studio, and you're just like, there is no secret sauce. hard work is the secret sauce, and you either are willing to put the time in or you're not, and so I think there's a lot of very talented filmmakers that will never make it because it takes more than just being a good creative unless you have a bulldog producing partner that's willing to do it for you. But in my mind, those don't really exist here. We don't really have people that are just producing and raising money, or there's not enough. And so I think every filmmaker needs to view their film as a business, and what are they willing to do to sell that business and raise money for the business.
So you lived in the big city, you did marketing, you came to Oklahoma making films, and then now you're executive director of deadCenter. Tell us about how you got your start at deadCenter.
Great question. So I have had now 11 movies play in deadCenter. And it's been a lot easier since I'm their boss. Just kidding. Just kidding. There are people who complain that my movies get in. Luckily, they're usually good enough. Basically, so I had a few films in the festival, and I was a volunteer. So if I wasn't working on movies, then I was a full-time volunteer. So I watched every movie for like 2 or 3 years for Melissa Scaramucci. And when Kaki and Melissa told me that they were leaving, I got very nervous because for me, deadCenter was the most validating part of the film festival in Oklahoma, of the film industry in Oklahoma, because it felt like there was a world of people not taking local filmmakers seriously. And then you show up to deadCenter and they're yelling at you, you're a filmmaker, you matter, your film is awesome. And I had never felt that anywhere else. And I still, and now it's obviously now our state's much more film friendly. But when you think back 15 years ago, it wasn't. And people were like, well, did you win an Oscar? Well, then you're not a filmmaker. And it's like, well, boy, that's a hard criteria. Did you win the Nobel Prize? Well, okay, great. Then you're not a doctor. And so I felt like deadCenter was the most positive place for filmmakers. And I was scared to death it was going to go away. So I applied for the job and thought maybe I'll do this for a couple of years till they find someone to do it, because I'd never worked at a nonprofit. When I started, Kim Haywood was already working there, and we were in a cube inside Steve Mason's company, Cardinal Engineering. And we were the loudest cube, and those engineers hated us. Except for Kristen Torkelson, who became our board chair and a big-time volunteer. And I went thinking deadCenter has to stay because there has to be someone promoting local filmmakers. There has to be someone saying your film's relevant, even if you're in high school, even if it's 5 minutes, even if it's about your grandpa. That is a movie. That is storytelling. That matters. And so I felt like deadCenter did that better than anybody. And what I'm most proud of, I'm probably most proud of the growth, but I am equally proud that we still provide that positive reinforcement for tons of filmmakers. Now, the truth is it's harder to get in now. And so not every high school filmmaker gets in and not every local filmmaker gets in. But when you do get in, we promote you all over the state. We promote you nationally. We try to get you distribution. We bring you to classes. So our goal is still, how do we benefit these filmmakers that have shared their awesome movies with us? And then on the flip side, how do we stay relevant to Oklahoma City as the world changes? And so we used to be really important because we were a fringe creative event. Now that's not the role we play. Now we are important because film is important and Oklahoma film is important. So we're no longer kind of this fringe fun thing for a few people. We're representing the art of film once a year in a big way and then doing education year round. And so it's been, for me, working at deadCenter has been the most rewarding job I've ever had. And it is because of that I chose to leave. And I know that sounds stupid, but I thought I could do this job for 20 more years and love it. But is that fair to Alex? And more important, is it fair to deadCenter? Do you want someone coasting for 20 years at a job, or would you rather have someone so passionate and so gung-ho that they're going to change the world? And that's what I think Alex is going to do. After she and I worked together for 7 or 8 years, I'm like, I don't want her to have to be 60 to get this job. I want her, she's 33, let's get a 33-year-old woman in there making new decisions, changing how we're thinking about film, changing how we're approaching the film industry here, and making new decisions. And the fact is, no matter how sweet I am, if I'm your boss, I'm still kind of making all the decisions, or I'm at least having a very heavy influence. And so deadCenter deserves to have someone young and creative like Alex Picard Davis to come in, take over, and infuse it with tons of new energy. And luckily, almost all of our core volunteers are really closely connected to her. So I think you won't see any there will be no disruption in the service of deadCenter. And instead, you'll just see more new excitement because she has a whole different perspective than I brought.
You were talking about her vision on our last call and the direction that the festival is going to be taking moving forward. And it's also an interesting time with COVID-19 and the transition online. And so the fact that, this new chapter for deadCenter is happening this year, tell us about that, and then tell us about what Alex has in store for the future.
So I guess it was early March, when things started getting canceled, right? And so South by Southwest got canceled probably, the week before we went. And right when that happened, we're like, we need to make a decision very quickly and stick with it. And so we met. I was probably pushing the hardest to keep it public and in theaters, just because I love those 1,000-person parties. But once we realized that wasn't going to happen, we decided, great, we're going online and we're going to do it better than anyone else. How do we do that? How do we start? Who do we contact? Who are the industry contacts we have? So Alex reached out immediately to Eventive, and Eventive is the system that's hosting the festival this year. And they're our ticketing and our scheduling system from the last few years. So we already had a relationship. She got on board with them. They're basically, because we decided quickly and definitively, that allowed us to take the lead within the Film Festival Alliance. And so Alex is the vice chair of the Film Festival Alliance board. And so she was leading the charge, and here's the technology we're using, here are the other ones available. And she was on a call every day with other film festivals talking about what are best practices, how are we doing this, what is Tribeca going to do, what is Sundance doing, what are the Cannes Film Festival people doing. And so it turned what was going to be me coasting into not easy, because the hardest thing for us is topping the parties every year. Because once you have 1,000 people and a bunch of celebrities and everything else, it's like, okay, what's next? We're going to the moon, So, so once we got past that, okay, well, that's not the criteria this year. It's not who can be the biggest and the flashiest. It's how can we create something totally revolutionary online for the filmmakers that we're here, that our mission is to support. And it has been awesome. So it has completely changed. So we went from getting permits, booking venues, taking in films, all of this stuff completely changed. Whereas now we're turning into a television studio that starting June 1st, we'll be recording pre-recording 70 hours worth of content. And that's Q&As with 8 people from different countries that are part of a shorts program, slot after slot after slot, all the filmmakers, some of the classes, some of the panels. And then during the festival, we're going to offer another 70 hours of live broadcasting. So we'll be broadcasting live from Tower. And this is a totally new model for us. So we are now a broadcasting company providing 170 hours worth of content over an 11-day period. And it has been awesome trying to figure it out, and I don't think luckily things like this, the whole world is, so the good news is, no one came back and was like, oh, I'm so mad you're online. Everyone was like, oh, thank goodness you're having a festival, because a lot of arts aren't able to. And the fact is, I was so sad. I have really close friends at Lyric, at the Philharmonic, at the Ballet, everyone at all the museums, all those people at all those different art groups are our biggest supporters. And so for us, it was heartbreaking that they had to cancel their season, but we have a medium, film, that allows us to move forward in a way that people are used to. Every one of us is on a Zoom call every week and is watching something streaming to us every week. Whether you're 1 or 80, that's your reality over the last 2 months. And so we're going to be able to tap into that and try to do some unexpected things as well. But basically to your question, it has been the most interesting thing that's ever happened to me at deadCenter. And I'm thrilled that I was here this final year so that I got to be a part of the transition, because moving forward, I think Alex will keep the online portion as a key component. I don't think it'll ever replace people's joy of going to a movie theater, but what it will replace is, when you used to go to deadCenter, you got 3 days to watch 120 movies. You're not going to see them all. And now you got 11, you can watch every single movie. And so if you're a movie buff, this should be the best year ever. And we're going to try to figure out moving forward, or Alex is how do we add that component to every festival. What I hope it is that shorts programs exist online and in the theaters, and then the features kind of decide on a one-by-one basis, because features are dealing with different distribution questions that affects what they're able to do with festivals.
There's a lot changing. This is your last year at deadCenter, and you're taking things online. Also, this year, the festival made the Smithsonian Magazine's 8 film festivals to attend, which is a big deal.
That
and
was
then
a
turn.
huge deal for us, and thank you for bringing that up.
Yes.
Because I hate to just promote myself all the time. Yeah, although you have to, filmmakers, get used to it. That was amazing, and what was so fun about it is, we were listed second after the One World, and that One World Festival really made me nervous when it was announced because it's Berlin, Venice, Tribeca, Cannes, Sundance. It's 20 of the biggest film festivals in the world that have combined. And at first I'm like, oh, should we be trying to be a part of that? I'm like, well, how would that help our filmmakers? If you go to the One World Film Festival, what are the odds you click down to deadCenter and then click down to a short film? And so we're like, no, we are a very unique, specific film festival that plays a great role in our region, in our state, and nationally. The fact is, the world doesn't need more Sundances. The world needs a ton of different, so on that list, as you saw, there was a Latino film festival, there was a vegan film festival, a Jewish one. And I think that is great because there are so many stories being told, and the world today, people are tired of having one point of view tell them every story. And so for us to be able to offer 140 films from Africa, Asia, Europe, America, our films are from all over the world, and they allow us to present a whole tapestry of storytelling from different perspectives. And I think that because of that, it was more important for us to stay true to ourselves, not try to glob onto another bigger festival, but provide something that is uniquely Oklahoman and uniquely relevant to our filmmakers.
One of the aspects that we really love about deadCenter is the networking.
Yes.
We talked about the parties. And so in this era of social distancing, what do you recommend in terms of, finding your film community, finding people that you want to work with during this type of time?
Yes. No, I think, boy, that is, if I can answer this, I will have a career ahead of me. That is the best question that we're still toying with, in that, live music, people were always like, oh, why don't you have more live music at deadCenter? And I'm like, because every one of our parties is specifically geared for you to meet a filmmaker and for filmmakers to meet each other or potential investors. And so we don't want you watching a band. We want you listening to music from a DJ and meeting filmmakers. And so usually we would do that. So the only parties that would have live music would be from 11 p.m. on, right? We'd bring JB out and then we'd bring a band or two. And, but the goal was always, we are Oklahoma's biggest networking event for filmmakers. And for us to do that, we have to create environments that allow for it. And so in this new environment, that is the biggest challenge. And how we've addressed it so far is we're going to have hangouts with smaller groups of filmmakers. So all shorts filmmakers, all features filmmakers, all documentary filmmakers, all music people. And we're going to do that leading up to the festival so that the filmmakers get a chance to meet each other. And we're also trying to figure out if we can allow them to watch each other so that you can watch anyone who's in your program. But the goal is let them meet up front. Because we tried something last year called Short Talk at Stella Nova. What the goal was let's get a series of panels of short filmmakers talking about their movies so people will come and see them. Well, that wasn't what happened at all. What happened was tons of short filmmakers met each other for their first time. And we're like, oh, great, because you have 1,000 people parties and I don't know anybody, but now I know these other shorts filmmakers. So when I go to the party, I have someone to say hi to. And of course, I hadn't thought about that because I'm perfectly comfortable talking to people in a 1,000-person party, but a lot of filmmakers aren't. And so we learned from that deal, we're like, okay, then we need to come up with specific ways for filmmakers to meet each other and then allow them to go out and meet the public. And so we're going to host a series of pre-festival meetups for filmmakers, and then we're going to do the same thing publicly during the festival. So we will announce it. We'll say, hey, it'll be kind of pop-up chats, and that will say, hey, tonight at 5, come meet all the shorts filmmakers and ask any questions you have. But we're going to do that after the first weekend so that people can watch all the movies. Because our thought was, usually we would say, meet all the filmmakers, meet someone you like, and then go see their movie. This year, it's figure out those movies and then come and talk to those filmmakers. So it's going to be a little bit opposite, but we are still researching, in addition to Zoom and Hangout, what are the ways that we can have you interact with the filmmakers that are sharing their movies, because they want to talk about it. They want to explain why they made that documentary. They want to talk about the 5-year process it took to get that interview, And so, we haven't announced all of those, but that is really our focus this week is, okay, community is important. How do we create community online? Now with the classes, so we're offering 12 free classes from the Film and Music Office, like Tony Marlowe, all sorts of people that are awesome. And we'll be doing live Q&As through all of those. And so part of it is we're using Facebook Live Q&As to allow people to interact as things are happening. So every panel will have live Q&As going on. Everything we're doing besides the actual movies will have a live Q&A component to it, so that there's an infinite ways to interact with it. And then we're attaching those Q&As to the film, so when you watch a movie after that first weekend, the Q&A will automatically play right after it.
We're excited because I think we're going to be able to catch a lot more. You can be more places, you can join more conversations, have more intentional meetups and conversations with filmmakers. So I know we're really excited for that. But one last question for you before we wrap up today. If you have to leave filmmakers with any last advice, what would that advice be?
I have a lot of advice for filmmakers. So, yeah. Point 32. No, I think my first advice is, if you want to be a filmmaker, do it. Go out and make that movie. Because I think, let's assume that you are not Quentin Tarantino and your first film is not going to be Oscar caliber or revolutionize the industry. And if you go from that perspective, you'll be more willing to let people read your screenplays. I hear so many people saying, oh, I don't want someone to steal my ideas. There hasn't been an Oscar-worthy idea come out of Oklahoma ever, right? I mean, like, no one has written an Oscar-winning movie from Oklahoma. So, I think a guy wrote Arrival from Norman. But allow people to help you. Allow your friends to work on that. Take advice on your screenplay. Assume you're not a genius yet, and take criticism. And don't be mad when someone says that character doesn't make sense. It probably doesn't. Every movie I've gone back of my own and watched, I see need room for improvement. And the movies where I was open to other people's input are the movies that turned out the best. Be collaborative, but also come up with an idea, film it, and be done with it, and move on to the next movie. Because I think the people that don't succeed are, if you're on your 6th year with your first movie, you're not doing it right. You need to get that movie done, because 6 years from now, you will have better ideas than 6 years ago. So finish that movie and do the next one, and do the next one, and do the next one, instead of being stuck on, this first film has to be perfect. It won't be. It's your first film. There's not a single thing in life where your first time out the gate, you're amazing at it, right? And so you have to practice, you have to train, you have to do all this stuff. And so I think filmmakers need to view themselves as, I want a career in film, not I've got to make this movie and it has to be perfect.
Lance, that's great advice. Just get out there and do it. And a lot of different aspects, entrepreneurship, business, there's so many places. Just get started and get it done. And
because there's no better teaching than making that movie and seeing people react. Like when in the back of a film festival and listen to people laughing where they're not supposed to and not laughing where they're supposed to, that helps me figure out what went wrong with that script. But it'll never happen if I'm just watching it myself and never letting the world see it. Right.
Learning to even fail. So all that is definitely very valuable. And again, I'm really excited for deadCenter Film Festival this year. Now I'm even more excited. I'm already excited, but now I'm even more excited. But just wanted to say thank you again for joining us to chat. And if people want to check out the deadCenter Film Festival, which I highly recommend, tickets are available at deadcenterfilm.org, I believe. Yes,
exactly. So they are half off this year. It's $100, and that $100 pays for us to transition to the festival online. So that $100 allows you to see 140 movies throughout an 11-day period and watch. And we're having film reunions of I Can Only Imagine. Greg Fredericks is going to talk about The Outsiders. Famke Janssen's going to talk about Breaking Up Bobby here in Oklahoma. And so we have a lot of really fun film cast and crew reunions. So it's going to be different, but I think it'll be the best festival we've ever done. The films are amazing, and I am so grateful to you two and to Freestyle Creative for what you have done for our industry, because you have brought an understanding of the importance of marketing and the importance of treating a film like a business, because it is. And so I'm really, really grateful for you, and I thank you for having me on today.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Those are such kind words.
Thank you so much, Lance. We're excited for the innovations with deadCenter this year. And thank you all to our listeners for checking in on the podcast this month. We're going to have 2 special mini episodes coming up with the creators of 2 other films, Shifter and She's the Eldest. So we'll be talking with Jacob and Zach Burns, and then Kate Jones about their films. So don't forget to follow the Really Fine podcast on social media at RFP OKC for more interviews and behind the scenes. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Yeah, and we're so proud of those films, and thank you very much for having me.